longevity is from the positive relationships in our life. They affect everything. Now, I know when the relationships in my life are healthy, I'm happier. So it could be a starting point. You look at who you're spending your time with, and the issue we have now is we're seeing so much on social media, aren't we, of extreme, that our goal for kind of this perceived perfection is escalated out of extremes.
It's beyond.
And I think it's about breaking it back, as you said, balance. It's breaking it back down into balance.
Hi, good peeps. This is the next episode of the Flexible Neurotic podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Milken, the Flexible Neurotic. Today, I have a guest who's going to give us some golden nugget advice on choosing ourselves in midlife. I think I might have stopped you in your tracks because you're like, choosing me? Choosing me? I'm in. I loved her on my Instagram and wanted you guys to hear from her herself. She is a London-based registered psychotherapist with 400,000 social media followers. Oh my God. She specializes in helping clients develop the skills they need to understand themselves at a deeper level. She shares accessible and relatable, I almost said your name, advice about self-work, trauma, attachment, and relationships. She has a new book out called Choose You. Ugh, I got to do this again. She has a new book out called Choose You, Gentle Words to Help You Heal and Grow. This is not a regular self-help book. This is self-help meets deep think, do the inner work, show up for yourself, reparent yourself, and chill our nervous systems in our super fast minds and lives. She believes that choosing you is not selfish, and we're going to dig into that and juicy concepts that will help us think, frame, and get tools for our own midlife internal shit shows. Her name is Helen Marie. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
Oh my God. I'm so happy you're here. You have this amazing, gorgeous, like magenta pink lamp next to you. It's so cute. I love it.
I'm honestly so hyped to be here.
Uh,
I've been such a fan of this podcast for such a long time. I can't quite believe I'm sat here as a guest. So
oh my
thank
God.
you.
And I can't believe you're here, like the woman behind all the quotes on Instagram. Everyone's going to go and look if they haven't already found you, like the other 400,000 people. Oh my God. Okay. And then this morning when I opened my phone, I see that you have a new podcast. Your first podcast. Tell us about that.
Sorry, tell me about that. Yes, it's something I've been working on for a while, a couple of months, and it's it's about the things we don't talk enough about. So I'm opening up space to try and normalize things. So I've got guests. Season 1's virtually recorded. It's going to come out every Thursday, comes out this Thursday. And it's chatting to experts all around the world around mental health and mental well-being. And yeah, I'm really excited.
And tell us what it's called.
I don't think we talk enough about ...
Ooh, there's a lot of dots there. There's so many things that we don't talk about. And I love talking about things that we don't talk about because I feel like it normalizes it. Because I feel like for midlife women, there are so many of us who are like sitting at home thinking, why do I feel like this? What's happening? Is this normal? Why is this happening? I might be the TMI, very irreverent version of it, but I feel like if you just say it and you lay it out on the table, then you can have the conversation. It's not always easy, but it's better than keeping it all bottled up inside and wondering what's wrong with you.
And then when you bottle, oops, sorry, just chucking things off my desk. When you bottle it all up inside, you feel quite alone in those moments. But there's something quite amazing that when you start to hear people talking about things that you've struggled with, you feel less alone in that moment. So that's what I'm hoping the podcast does, actually, that people feel less alone when they listen and hopefully reach out for help or resources, and less giving themselves such a hard time about something. So yeah, definitely opening up space for the conversations that we're perhaps not having.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my platform is based on relatability and other people seeing me and hearing me talking about things that they're going through. Because
Yeah.
it's sort of like what we're just talking about of like not wanting to be alone, not necessarily being able to articulate exactly how you feel. And then you see someone like me or you come on Instagram and they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm feeling. That's exactly what I'm thinking. And we all want to feel seen and heard.
I think that's the root of it. We do want to be seen and heard. And I think it sounds so simple in context, doesn't it?
It
But
does.
actually, to when someone really sees you and hears you, you think, I really haven't felt this before. This is why it feels so good. So I think those souls that really make you feel seen and heard, cherish, keep them close, because sadly they're few and far between.
Yeah. And I also think what's interesting about this point in life is you have an opportunity to kind of reassess who your friends were, who they are
Mm,
now,
mm,
and
mm,
maybe what types of friends you don't have that you feel like you need. Because in every different season of your life, you're kind of needing something else. So perhaps like in your 20s, you needed like that those friends that would make you be more social and go
mm,
out and kind of be
mm,
more free. And, maybe at a different point in your life, you need more like mom, carpool friends, people who are
mm.
raising kids. And I feel like midlife is a time where you're kind of trying to figure out who your people are again and what you need at this time of your life.
And that can look really different to anything you've needed before. It can look so different. There's a real essence of identity shifting in
Yes.
those years. I remember, I mean, my children are a little bit older than yours, Sarah, but I remember going through a time where, and I genuinely remember the moment thinking, it's not my time anymore. It's my children's as they were in their kind of late teenage years. And I really felt like I was like dropping away from who I
Yeah. You become
was.
invisible.
Yeah, and I felt it. And I was sat in a cafe and I was waiting for my daughter to come and meet me. And I felt like I'd lost myself completely. I didn't know who I was. I didn't even really know what my views and values were, or what was important to me, or whether I had any dreams left in me. Absolutely, you're right, invisible, gone. And I really resented myself for thinking that my time had passed. And ironically, I was probably 41, 42 then. I'm 50 now and more fulfilled than I've ever been. But what was interesting at 41, 42, I thought my life was, that was it.
I really want part of this episode or a lot of this episode to be about exactly that, like
Mm,
framing for midlife women how at this point in of our lives, not everyone has children, but whether you have children or
no.
not, and you're ready for that next thing, or you're just starting to feel a little bit off, a little bit stuck, a little bit itchy for something new
Mm,
or different,
mm.
how we can kind of harness that energy from feeling stuck in the mud to actually getting ourselves to dive in and really do what you call the inner work. And I want to get into all of that. And I think that your book is a really good example of that. And like one of my question is why did you write this book? Was this book something that you needed? Was this book something that your clients needed? Like what's the deal with the book? Cuz it was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really kind of you to say. I think it's a combination of both. I think I remember hearing Gabor Mate say that when you write a book, it's very often the book that you needed to learn from. And isn't it bizarre that I've already said that when I was 41, 42, felt very, very lost? Well, that's when I actually incidentally ended up going back to retrain, and I went on to do my second master's in psychotherapy and counselling because I needed something new. And I there's a long journey, and it's quite a personal journey of how I ended up into psychotherapy and counseling, but I'm very glad I did. I'm not going to share that story right now,
Okay.
but the book I've written is all about finding that way to choose you when you feel a bit lost, because very often we feel lost because we don't know ourselves. We feel lost because of the inner scripts that we're telling ourselves, the self-limiting beliefs that we listen to, that we sit back and people please. We don't think, as I did, not my time anymore. We have so much self-doubt about our own role, whether that comes from society, whether that comes from much earlier scripts in our life. So I started to look at all the factors that contribute to you doubting yourself and get you to get a better, deeper understanding of who you really are and why you are the way you are. I mean, the whole way through that book, you see it's question after question after question. The book doesn't give you the answers. It helps you find your own answers.
Right. And I think that that's one of the themes and mantras of my platform and my midlife journey is that no one's coming to rescue you. And Helen, a psychotherapist, an author, now a podcaster, isn't going to have the exact answer. The only thing that we can do for each other is kind of lay out what the questions were that we started asking ourselves. But we can't
Mm,
always give the answers because
mm,
everyone's answers are going to be different. Like in my situation, like I have a bunch of friends who have like started companies. I have a bunch of friends who have amazing hobbies and groups of friends and they play mahjong and pickleball. And everyone is looking for something different. Some people are
mm,
looking for a solo project, like writing a book. And
mm.
some people are looking for more connection. So they're
Yes.
joining these groups, but not everyone's is going to be the same. And we don't need to judge what everyone else's are. We don't have to have the same as what everyone else's are, because not everyone's going to want to start a podcast or write a book. Of course
No,
not. And not
no.
everyone's going to want to play pickleball or play mahjong or, start an Etsy shop or whatever it is. But I feel like a lot of times we can't figure out what those things are, but a lot of that is because we've never stopped and taken the time. But stopping and taking the time and looking at a blank page and not knowing what to write or what to say is kind of scary.
It is. I mean, firstly, what's pickleball?
It's kind of like it's kind of like tennis.
Oh, okay. I have
It-
no idea.
okay, that's so funny because here it's like all the rage. That's
And the other
hilarious.
one, you said pickleball
Oh,
and
mahjong, like, like the tiles, the games. I don't know if you guys have
hmm,
you just probably have a different name for it.
yeah. Okay. So no, but as you said, it's the questions you ask to connect to yourself. I remember years ago when I was training, sat at university, there was a group of 20, 25 of us in the room, and the psychotherapist taking the session said, right, I want you all to write down on a piece of paper what airport means to you. And I'm here to become a psychotherapist. What do you mean? What does an airport mean? No word of a lie. When we read them all back out, there were 25 different descriptions of what an airport meant to people. And in that moment, you realize that we all come with such different experiences, wants, needs, issues, problems, dreams. They're never the same. So you're right. It's about looking at what you need. I can ask all the questions and help guide you. And the book also, with those questions, gets you to really tap into what your body does as you answer those questions, as you read those questions. Is there resistance? Is there openness? What's coming up for you in your nervous system the whole time? There's so much more information in our inner wisdom and our nervous system than we sometimes give it credit for.
Totally. And I think what's interesting, like even raising teenagers myself,
Well
one of my
done.
kids I know, honestly, it's like work in progress. But, I was talking to one of my kids and they were talking about how, they weren't sure if they wanted to do this project, to commit to it, to not commit to it. And historically, it's come with a lot of baggage, like different personalities, lots of mixed all together. And I just said, like, how does that make your nervous system feel? Like,
Mm, mm,
is every red flag going off? Because if
mm.
every red flag is going off, that's a no. That's different than resistance, though, because I know for me, even going through this journey myself, I do have like sometimes my nervous system is like, "Oh my god, I can't record one more podcast. I'm so tired." That's different than this situation is ruining my life, or this is toxic, or these people are not good for me, or whatever it is. There's a
Yeah,
difference
yeah.
between resistance that's just normal of like self-doubt, can I really do this, or is this just not good for me?
I think you're right. And with resistance, I always put it as, remember that resistance can be seen as your nervous system trying to keep you safe. So
Yes.
actually, when you're saying, "Oh, I can't record another podcast," your nervous system is saying, "Sarah, give me a break. I need a rest. Give me the rest, and then I can come back." So it's giving meaning to the resistance, listening to the sensations in the body. The red flags, yes, let's start using our inner wisdom. What's coming up here? Let's use our knowledge base here
Yeah,
and
like,
our
are these the people that are good for me?
exactly,
That's a totally different
exactly.
conversation.
And that's really tapping into our parenting brain, which, if you think about our prefrontal cortex, doesn't fully develop until we're 26. That makes that very hard for the teenagers because they find it very hard to have reasoning, rationale, and resources to pull upon. I would say then they need to tap into the prefrontal cortex of their parents
Oh my
if
god,
they
and
have a
they're
good trusting
yeah, exactly,
relationship.
unless they're, like, running for the hills like mine
I
are.
know.
No, I'm just kidding. But I think all of this quote work is something that you get into in the book called self-work. And I've
Yeah.
heard other people call it inner work, or there's a lot of different names for it. But when a
Mhm,
midlife woman comes into your office for the sake of this
mhm,
podcast, because it's a
mm.
midlife podcast,
I know.
like what are the things you're hearing, and what are the suggestions, like the key pieces, the tools that you're giving them to dive into this and really get unstuck? Like for the time when you're in the cafe, like when you were in that cafe, like thinking to yourself, "Oh my god, I'm disappearing." How did
Mm,
you get from that to, "Okay, I'm going back to school?" Because there's a lot of
mm,
steps in between
mm.
there.
Okay, I mean, there are a lot of steps. I think I think there's deep self-honesty, and I think it's about remembering that we're living organisms. We find a way to survive. And I think if you have even a seed of, "I want to change, life has to be more than this," give that seed water. Let it bloom because it's come up for a reason. And then do the work, which might be reaching out to friends, talking to people you trust, saying, "I'm just not feeling myself." There's look to people you'll be inspired by, listen to podcasts, read good books. I always say to people, nothing changes if nothing changes. You have to be the advocate for that change. You have to look at what your own needs are and start to advocate for them. And I think the premise of the book is you matter too. And we show up, particularly at this stage in our life, we show up a lot for the people around us, don't we? We
Yeah.
really do. And our needs do get neglected, forgotten, unless we give them a voice.
But you know what's so interesting and kind of weird about this process is
Mm,
when everything begins to feel like it's slowing down. Like you're in the cafe, if you're feeling less relevant, you're moving from like head mom to consulting mom. You're going from manager to consultant parent
Yeah,
and you're feeling less relevant. It's sort of like you have more time, but it almost feels worse because you don't know what to do with that time.
absolutely. You lose your purpose, Sarah.
Yeah. So you're
And
sitting there going, okay, but what now? I have the time that I've been wanting, and now I just don't know what to do.
I know. And that's when you start delving into the questions. What sparks you? I mean, there's a lovely question we use a lot in therapy, which is, and it is a whimsical question, but it often helps. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you like your life to look like in 5 years? So we use it as a very powerful visualization exercise. I can't tell a client in front of me who's struggling what they want their life to look like in 5 years, but they can start to run a movie. We call it run a movie. So I get them to relax into their body and then run a movie in their mind from start to middle. We don't go much further than that. And just what would you like that movie to play out like? How would you like to be in that movie? What kind of people are around you? What are you doing? And that movie can really be quite eye-opening. And then I bring them back into the room, not in a hypnotic way, but just come back to the present. And what came up for them? What was new there? Now, that then gives us the starting point to say, okay, how are we going to get from here, where we feel stuck, to this beautiful movie of what you would like your life to look like? And that's a very deep therapeutic process of inner self-work, of change, of being in the driving seat of that change too, and not just letting life happen around you.
Now, when you were sitting in that cafe from that time to the time where you actually went back to school, like, did you always know you wanted to go back to school, or is that
No,
something that you fell upon?
I mean, I fell upon it really. I fell upon it, and then I made a lot of changes as a result. So I fell upon it from a circumstantial perspective, in that I used to be a public health specialist in infectious diseases for the Health Protection Agency in London. Loved it. Led in meningitis, very passionate about my career. Took a career break, thought I may go back to that. But during that career break, someone very close to me struggled with their mental health. And the support they got from psychotherapy, psychiatrists, was phenomenal. And there was my sign, without me realize I was looking for it, that said, that's what I want to do. And that's
Interesting.
why I went back and trained.
So it was a personal moment, a
Yeah.
little bit of synchronicity,
Yes.
and all the energies kind of mixing together to create that. And did it feel easy for you? Like, oh, I'm just going to apply to schools. Or did you have resistance to it? Did it feel like not
Oh my
everything was
goodness.
perfect?
I felt sick at points. So when I remember going for the interview, and I remember thinking, oh, I could be part of something again. I felt like I'd lost being part of something. I'd got lost living my life. And I felt like there was something new and exciting. That's all great in the beginning until you have to study and you have to do
Yeah.
the work and you have to read the papers. And there was plenty of self-doubt, plenty of self-doubt. But I think there's part of you that kind of pushes through that, because you think, I've started this for a reason. I can't give up now. And the changes as a result, I mean, I had to go through over 100 personal therapy hours myself. The mirror was held up. I learned lots. So I think I'm just bringing that journey to other people at that stage in their life, of a deeper understanding where you do start to choose yourself too.
And why do you think that choosing yourself feels so selfish? Is it a
Number of reasons.
societal thing? Is it like, what is that? Because we all feel it.
I think I think it's going to shift. I think it's going to shift. But I think that many people don't have the upbringing where they are encouraged to choose themselves too. So there's lots of get on with it, don't cry, you'll be all right, don't let anyone know you're struggling, mask, 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 hide, hide, hide. And then on top of that is a societal pressure and cultural pressure to not choose yourself because it's selfish. But when you just add the word choose you to, you realize that we're all wanting our friends and family to choose themselves, to look at the friend that's in a damaging, toxic relationship, not choosing themselves. You'd want them to choose themselves and speak up and advocate for themselves and take up space and set boundaries or leave or get couples therapy. That's choosing themselves. The person, the mother who's low and lonely and not doing anything about it, just purely there for her children, but actually quite unhappy in that state. You'd love to see her choosing herself, having some time for herself so she can show up as a better mother. The ripple effect on the children is vast. So I think when we change it from choose you to choose you too, and how we'd want those around us to choose themselves, you kind of think, well, why can't I reflect that back on me?
I really love that. And I really appreciate talking about the parenting piece and the childhood piece. And we were going to get to
Mm,
that. I was going to get to that a little bit later in the conversation, but I guess we can talk about it now because you do say that this idea of reparenting yourself is a huge theme that comes up around this time in your life.
mm.
First of all, what does reparenting mean if someone's listening and going, I don't really understand what she means? And how does it play into our midlife self reinvention journey where we're trying to figure out what's next for us? I mean, obviously, we could do 27 episodes on attachment theory and
I know,
reparenting and
I
all the
know.
things, but just kind of like the bottom line crux of it.
Well, reparenting from a therapy point of view is giving yourself the love and attention and care you need that you might never have received before. So it's, in very simplistic terms, being there for yourself, but being on your own side. So it's engaging that nurturing inner narrative that it doesn't matter what age we are, we still need that care and looking after, don't we?
Yeah.
You know, when you can sit there sometimes and feel very isolated. I remember stages through parenting where I felt incredibly isolated. And this isn't a woe be me or poor me. It's not that. It's just, it can be incredibly isolating. You know, my husband's out at work all day, got a career, mixing with other people. And sometimes in parenting, it can be quite lonely. It can be really quite lonely.
And boring and like Groundhog Day, where you're living the
And
same day over and over again. I hate to say it, but it's
I
true because
know.
it's the same day over and over.
I know. I know. And I've actually got, interestingly, I've actually got some clients that are stay-at-home dads. And
Mm,
it's really interesting hearing their perspective. They're struggling. They're struggling with the monotony of it,
mhm.
of not mixing with adults, of not feeling a purpose outside of the children. Look, Sarah, lots of people get an awful lot of fulfillment from having children. We
Oh,
have to
having
acknowledge
kids
that.
is that was the best. Being a
Yeah,
parent was the best job of my life. And
exactly.
at a certain point, I needed something else too.
Yes, and I love that. It's the and statement, isn't it? I love my children and I love being a mummy, and I need something else for me too. But we seem to cut off that and as a parent, don't
Right.
we? I love being a mummy and I love my children. That's it. But there is another layer that needs exploring, that needs fulfilling, that brings us back to be, in my opinion, and in my own personal story, made me a better mother. Definitely. So coming back to reparenting, it's about giving yourself that love and care and attention that perhaps you're lacking or did lack, and beginning to meet those needs, listening to yourself, being that advisory in the moment. How can I best get through this moment? What do I need? For many of us, we might not know the answers to that, but it could be reaching out to someone. It could be saying, I actually need to speak to my husband about this later, not just sit in silence. I need support. And it's quite amazing how something unfolds as we communicate with people. All that happens when we stay in our own mind is we ruminate.
Oh my gosh, I'm like rumination station.
Oh, it honestly, it just goes round and round and round.
Around and around
I
and
know,
around.
it doesn't
I
go
know.
anywhere.
But what's
So,
interesting is sometimes, like you said, sometimes someone else can break that for you. Like my mom, for example, she has been a career woman her whole life. And she wasn't a big exerciser because she was always at work. But
mhm,
now that she's retired and she's 75, I'm like, okay, mom, now you need to start exercising. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" That kind of thing. There was a lot of resistance to it. "I don't like it. It's boring. Duh, 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 duh." I mean, I nagged her for 2 years. And she called me the other day and she said, "Thank you." She's like,
oh,
"I fought you for 2 years. I told you I didn't want to do it. I gave you every reason in the book that I couldn't do it. And you just kept sticking on it. Mom, 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 you have to do this. Mental health, physical health, bones,
yeah,
all the things."
yeah,
And she goes, "I've done it. I just got my DEXA scan back and it's better."
incredible.
And I thought, "Oh my God, like we all have so much resistance to trying new things and doing things that we don't necessarily want to do that are uncomfortable." Like most
Mm,
people don't want to work out. I mean, I call
mm.
them the dumb weights because I'm like, "Oh, I have to lift weights again. Oh, like it's so annoying." But
You're
they're
so
the
good.
dumb and necessary weights
Yeah,
because I know that I need that for my body health. So for
yeah,
me, that's like checking the box. It's not like doing something that's terrible that I hate. It's not my favorite, but I do it because I need it for my body.
yeah, yeah. But you're caring for yourself
Yes.
in a really, um, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? In a way that you're bettering yourself, you're being there for yourself. And so many women don't make those choices, Sarah. I mean, if I can think of clients now that would be staggered by your commitment to that. They couldn't imagine doing that and actually thinking that they matter enough to do that level of self-care.
Right. And the funny thing is I don't like it.
No,
Like I have some friends who love working out and they love lifting weights and they love walking for 10,000 steps. I don't. I don't pretend that I do. I would much rather sit on my ass and scroll Instagram. I mean,
I
I'll take
know.
that any day of the week. But there are certain things in life that we just have to do.
But do you not get a healthier level of dopamine when you do your weights than you do on scrolling Instagram?
Oh, I'm sure I do. I'm
Yeah,
sure I
a healthier
do.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a healthier choice. It's like, do I want to eat the real ice cream? Yeah. Can I get away with the frozen yogurt that has a little less sugar and more chemicals? Yeah. Like everything in life is a give
I
and
know.
take,
I know.
And
I know.
that's the other thing is I think that in society, it's like you either have to be like a weightlifter and look like a supermodel, or you just don't do it at all. And
I
I
know.
think
I
for
know.
me, it's just been about kind of the good enough. Like, what's my good enough? Like, if I
Mm,
have an hour workout scheduled, but I'm not in the mood, I do it for 30 minutes and I move on.
mm.
I'm not into self punishment. If something doesn't feel good, I don't have to do it at full capacity all the time.
And I think that's really important. And the issue we have now is we're seeing so much on social media, aren't we, of extreme, that our goal for kind of this perceived perfection is escalated out of
It's
extreme,
beyond.
isn't it?
It's beyond.
And I think it's about breaking it back, as you said, balance. It's breaking it back down into balance. The small steps we can take, that that small step on that dirt track of that neural pathway that says this will make me feel better, and keep going down that path, because it does make you feel better.
It does.
Ultimately, it does make you feel better.
But like,
And
for
I bet
example, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm gonna say, I bet the weeks that you haven't cared for yourself, you haven't put yourself first too, I bet they've not been as great mentally.
Oh, 1,000%. Like, there are weeks where I'm like helping one of my kids with something and I have to cancel all my workouts. Or, like this morning I'm recording with you, so I'm not working out. Then I
Mm,
have two meetings and I'm thinking, there's no way I'm working out at 5 o'clock. But I kind of knew that. So I walked on the treadmill yesterday, even though I typically don't work out on Sundays. But it's not perfect. It's not
mm.
it's like just kind of making it work and doing the best I can with a little icing on top. It's not the bare minimum, it's not the extreme. It's kind of just enough. I checked my fucking boxes for the week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's that self-accountability that you've got there is just fantastic,
It's
Sarah.
not
And
perfect though, and I'm not a
yeah,
punisher. So if I miss something or I whatever, I don't self-punish. I'm like, you know what? I wasn't into it. We're gonna move on
yeah,
and we're gonna do the
yeah,
next thing. I think
yeah.
for me, and I think for a lot of women, living life up until midlife feels pretty linear in the sense
Mm,
of like you go to elementary school, you go to middle school, you go to high school, you go to university or not, you get married, maybe you don't. But it's a lot of performance box checking. I
mhm,
check that
mhm,
box, I check that box.
mm,
But by the time you get to this age, and if you have kids and or a spouse, you've checked a lot of boxes already. And
mm.
then you get to a point where you have more time and you don't know what there aren't a lot of boxes from midlife till death. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a lot of
Wow.
free time.
I know, I
And it's
know.
almost easier, like if you have the structure, like you said, of like, oh, you went back to school. So I don't know how long your schooling was. Let's say it's 2 years or 3 years. You know what you're doing for those 2 to 3 years
Mm,
because
mhm.
it's structured by the school program. But I think
Yes.
what's hard about midlife is there is no structure to it. You have
No,
to
it's very
create
free.
the
Yes.
structure. It's very free in an amazing kind of way and a very free in a paralyzing way of like, nobody's telling me what to do. I don't have to be in carpool. I don't have to make a school lunch. I don't have to volunteer at the school play. So what am I doing?
I know, I know. And that takes a period of adjustment, doesn't it? Because
Yeah,
your nervous system has been in go, 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 go for years. And then you're just stopping.
totally.
And but that's where I think that running the movie visualization can be so helpful. I mean, it can stop a few people. It's like, I've got no idea. How can I have no idea? But sit with it. Look at your role models. Who's around you? Who are you inspired by? Be inspired. Don't think that you can't do it too. Look at ways that you could also achieve that, have that, whatever that is. I don't mean on a big scale, narrow it right down, but what makes you think, yeah, that's what I'd get up and do in the morning?
Yeah, it's all about what would you, and that doesn't mean it's not hard though, because like you and I both get up in the morning. Like I want to do my podcast, I want to show up on Instagram, but there are days where I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this for one more minute. I'm just gonna close my whole podcast. I'm gonna shut down my Instagram account. And I think with midlife hormones and all those changes that we're going through, that it gets all mixed up. And sometimes you just feel like a swampy mess.
Okay, and what do you do on those days?
I just do what I literally like lay on my bed and do nothing.
I love that. Is your
Like I
body,
just, yeah,
yeah, your body is basically saying you're going into a bit of what you call like a freeze response.
totally.
You know, you've dipped out of what we call your window of tolerance into a kind of, I just can't do any of it anymore. So you're not being able to do the things you want to do. So I always say to people, listen to that. Listen to your body in the moments it wants you to stop. It's not going to stop forever. It's just going to stop for that day or that hour, and then something else will happen. I think we so often think that life is stuck and it stays still. It's shifting and moving all the time. It's fluid.
You have an analogy that you talk about in your book. I think it's like a frozen river, a
Oh,
frozen puddle, something. And it was like
yeah.
a frozen body of water. And you say, you're never going to unstick the freezingness of the water. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're
No,
never
you're
going
not.
to get through the ice chips, all the things, but you have to figure out how to maneuver yourself to get flow and heat and energy
Yes.
through the block of ice. And so maybe an example of that is like you show up at the dinner that maybe you didn't really want to go to, but you knew you were going to maybe meet some new people that would kind
Yeah.
of re-inspire you. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the river analogy is about when you can't let go of something and you feel stuck. And so it's that frozen. And I talk about the fact of using heat to melt the water so it can flow again. And when we're talking about the self-work and the inner work heat, I'm talking about compassion for yourself. I'm talking about movement. I'm talking about self-care. And coming back to movement, when we give our emotions movement, they shift from feeling stuck. So that's why therapists talk a lot about dance your emotions out. You know, chuck on a really good song or playlist. Literally feel the music. Dance like no one's watching. Get a journal, write down your feelings, get them out of your body. Go for a run, go for a walk. What happens is that when we start to move, we start to, it's almost like moving through a tunnel. The thoughts that get stuck at the back of our head and our ruminating and that are just flooding into our body, making us feel more stuck, what we actually end up doing is engaging the front part of our brain, which stops the back part of our brain. It doesn't sound very scientific. It is quite
No, I
scientific.
get it.
From the ruminating thoughts. So you start to engage a different part of your brain, which then stops you feeling stuck in the thoughts. So not always easy to do. I mean, goodness, my thoughts tend to come in spiraling form in the middle of the night. Really
That's such a
unhelpful.
good time.
Oh, and do I ever think, let's go and do the things that are good for me? No, I lie there with the ruminating thoughts. And they're
Yes.
the most ridiculous things, Sarah. I'm embarrassed to even admit what I might be spiraling thoughts.
We
They're
all
just,
have it.
they're
We
just,
all have
they're
it.
just crazy. So we have to give movement. So it is get out of bed, go and make a cup of tea, you know, go and do something. Otherwise, you'll stay in bed for 2, 3 hours with that same stupid, pesky thought
I
going
know.
round and
I know.
round.
And I think sometimes like I'm like an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And like I can go for 3 days and have a bunch of meetings and podcasts and dinners and all the
Hmm.
things. And then I need like 2 days by myself,
Hmm.
just by
I get
myself.
that.
And it's not depressed. It's
No.
not sad. It's like just kind of giving my nervous system a break from
Yes.
absorbing other people's energy.
Yes. One of the tricks I use for that, I know it's difficult, but it can be quite a good visualization, is the bubble technique. So that you imagine you have a bubble around you. And between you and the outside edge of the bubble is your beautiful, serene, safe, quiet space. And anything else that comes up, the negative, the noise, you literally let it come up to the bubble and bounce off. And somehow that just helps create a bit of distance between you and all that noise that can come in. But I think also what you're doing with those 2 or 3 days rest is meeting your needs.
Yeah, and it may not be laying in bed. It may
No.
be talking on the phone with a best friend. It may be going to the mall and walking around stores aimlessly, but choosing whatever I want to be doing or what feels good to
Mm,
me,
mm,
whether it's
mm.
super productive or not.
That's your call. And
Hmm.
that's your prerogative, isn't it? In the moment, this is what I need. And what you're doing is using the tools that bring your nervous system back to a healthy rhythm that doesn't feel quite so activated.
And I think for some people, it's going out and like meeting a million friends and having a
Mm,
drink. And for other people, it's a night at home. Maybe you're not even watching TV. Maybe
mm.
you're, I don't know, reorganizing your pantry. I don't know, whatever it is, but everyone's version is going to look different.
Which is what I was saying about the
Yeah.
airport word. You know, we all have a different meaning for what works for us in those moments. It's finding yours, and it's finding yours and giving you yourself the approval that that's okay if that's your preferred method. So often with social media, we think we should be out, we need more friends, we should be doing more. We should be more like that person.
I need to have that supplement. I need
Yeah.
to, I
Oh my
know.
goodness. How many times have you bought
I
supplements you
know. Oh my
don't
God, I'm guilty of
need?
it. My husband's
A-
like, "Are you starting a vitamin store? What's happening here?"
And just slowing down those external messages, slowing that down. What do you really need? And letting go of that should, which can be so loud in that busy social media world.
Well, I think there's a quote in your book that I want to read that I think will
Mm.
make people feel a lot better. It says, "You aren't broken, aren't an emotional mess, you aren't damaged, you aren't unlovable. You may just need some gentleness to guide you back home to a relationship with yourself that feels more nourished, deeply supportive, and understanding."
I'm glad you pulled that quote out. I think that's the essence, isn't it? And as you were reading that, I was thinking this taps into the importance of developing a secure attachment to ourselves. We think about attachment with others so much, don't we? So how we attach to our partners, our children, but what's your own attachment to yourself like?
You talk about coming home.
Mm.
I want you to, we keep reading about it on social media, in magazine articles. What does that mean? And how do we know if we're home?
Okay, so I think I touch on it in several chapters, don't I?
Yes.
Because I think coming home from a therapy point of view is that deep connection with your authentic core self. Now, that sounds great and looks great written on paper, but very few people know what that really feels like. So the work is looking at what makes you feel good. Who are the people in your life that you feel safest with? Why? It's looking at that authenticity. What are your values? What, when you read something, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Tap into that. Don't just agree with everything because of your people-pleasing tendencies. What do you feel? What does your nervous system do when you're reading that? So I think it's about that deeper connection with your core self. Sarah, it's not easy. And I spent way too many years not knowing what that was. But it's a really wonderful feeling when you can just say, no, that's not for me. This is for me.
Mm. So coming home is knowing what's for you and what's not.
Yeah, so that you get that, when you can take that breath in and then a little bit more. Now, in situations where we're not being authentic or don't feel ourselves, we can't take that big, deep breath because we don't feel relaxed enough. So I think it's anything that makes our body just feel super safe. We
So do
spend
you
so
think
many of
that's
our days.
why so many kids in high school are so uncomfortable because they don't feel like school is a place where they can take a deep breath?
I mean, it certainly can be for some groups of children. It's a very good environment for them, but for so many, as I know personally, school is a really, really, really difficult journey. And I think you've hit something there. It's very hard to turn up day in, day out in an environment that feels incredibly disaligned to something you would want. Is that a word, disaligned?
I think
Goodness.
so, or
Oh,
misaligned. I don't even know, but I
it's
get
the
it.
end of my day, Sarah.
Yeah,
I'm
I get it.
confusing all
It's the
my
beginning of
words.
my day, but I'm saving my coffee for after the podcast.
So putting yourself in an environment where you don't feel regulated,
Hmm.
that's tough. So I would say make sure that child is supported outside of the environment where they can find regulation.
I feel like
But
it's for moms too. Like
yeah, no,
there are
Sarah,
a
you're
lot of
right.
different schools where I have felt differently as a person.
Okay,
Like
okay.
even in this group of moms, in this particular group of moms, I feel
Yeah,
really comfortable. In this
yeah.
group of moms, I feel really uncomfortable. I feel judged. So I think it's
Mhm.
for adults too. It's like finding the places where you don't feel so judged and you can be you and you can take that deep breath.
I mean, what are we here for if we can't do that?
I know.
What are we here for if we're spending our time in circles where we feel judged? Step away. I mean, I've got a whole chapter in my book on understanding others because I felt that was really
It
important
is.
to understand where other people are coming from. We can't be for everyone, as everyone isn't for us. But I think when you do the work, you have an ability to hold more space for others and to walk away from them too.
Yeah, and to understand that everyone else has their own baggage and story. And a
Everyone.
lot of the time it's not about you, it's about them.
Absolutely.
And I
But
do like
having,
that question that you bring up in the book where you say to ask yourself, does this feel like me? Or where do I feel the
mm,
most like myself? Because I think a lot of times by the time we get to this point in our lives, we don't even know or remember.
if I asked you that, where do you feel most you?
With my family, like my immediate
Yeah,
family in my
yeah,
home.
yeah. And I
Like,
bet your nervous system relaxed as you said that, didn't it?
yes. Like
Yeah,
I am not a big partier, go out, be with a
no,
million people. I
no,
am most comfortable like in my house with my husband, knowing my kids are accounted
mm,
for. That's my happy place. Whereas other people who are much more sort of social than I am, their happy place is, being on a vacation with 40 friends. And
yeah.
that's okay. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Because that's where they're getting joy from. But for me, I would rather be on a family vacation just with my husband and two kids.
yeah,
It just
yeah,
depends on what's good for you. And I think a
yes,
lot of people aren't willing to say what they want. They just kind of give in to what they've been doing for the last 4 decades and what's
mm,
been asked of them. And
yeah,
I just want to urge women to take this time right now and say, you know what? I'm sick of traveling with those six families. When
Mm,
I travel with those 6 families, my nervous system is not happy. I'm walking on eggshells. I have to worry about how I look all the time, and I'm not enjoying the actual vacation.
exactly, exactly. And what I loved about even just asking you that question and you noticing that your body settled into that kind of that is what I like, that is where I feel my happiest, is you can then from that place own that about you. This is who I am. This is what makes me happiest. And from there, we start to create the step of not worrying about whether others are judging us. We'd rather be us doing this. And then something from that shifts. Notice the release of worrying about what others are thinking. It can just be so freeing.
I think a lot of times, like one of my friends who started her own, I guess, like business project, she said, Sarah, one thing you said to me that made me decide to actually go and do it is, what would you do if no one was watching?
Mm,
Because a lot of times we don't do the things we want to do because we think other people are going to be judging us. And in fact, they might judge you for 5 seconds, but first of all, who cares? But second of all, if they have the time to be doing that, they should be finding something else to do.
exactly. And supporting that is, I mean, it's a very existential quote, but and that that we often use is life isn't a dress rehearsal. I'm sure you've heard that. And
Yeah,
why are we living it any other way? You know, it's there's all those books, aren't there, around the regrets of the elderly.
totally. Yes.
And
Oh,
there's something in that, Sarah. You
oh,
know, run that movie. Run that movie. How do I want my life to be? What do I want to be doing? How can I take one tiny step today to move towards that?
I know it's so hard for us. So if there's a woman, a midlife woman who comes into your office, my kids are out of the house, my husband's playing golf and working.
Yeah.
What's next for me? Like where does one begin that work? Because everyone talks about doing the work, but unless you have a therapist who has, the 12-week or 12-month journey of taking you from A to Z, it
Mhm.
feels very haphazard and I don't know where to start. And I'm looking on social media and I'm reading Helen Marie's quotes and I'm listening to these podcasts, but it's hard for me to kind of put it all together. How do you lay out that kind of non-linear journey to feel like
Mm.
you're actually making progress?
I think quieten down the outside noise. Look at what you used to enjoy doing before life stopped you doing those things. You like those for a reason. Can you connect back to those? Again, what would you like your life to look like? Who does inspire you? If we keep doing the same thing, we'll get the same result. We have to trust if we just do something a little bit different. Maybe we have to try a variety of things. Maybe we need to try things that we might not feel comfortable trying. Just trust in the process of being more open-minded. It's, again, as I said in the beginning, where's the seed? What is that seed? Nurture it, water it, give it time. So often people are rushing processes, aren't they? It's
Well, because
giving
we
it.
want the 12-week plan to
I know, I
fulfillment.
know. I also think that it's really important that, yes, we do the self-work, but I think it's so crucial not to overlook that the people we surround ourselves with matter.
Totally.
Yeah. So you must be familiar with the happiness study. The
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, longevity is from the positive relationships in our life. They affect everything. Now, I know when the relationships in my life are healthy, I'm happier. So it could be a starting point. You look at who you're spending your time with. If they're not inspiring you, making you feel good about yourself, you don't want to spend time with them. You
Mhm.
don't feel you don't feel safe. How can we shift this? How can we find other nervous systems where we get a beautiful co-regulation? It's not about codependency. And I'm not talking just about romantic relationships, any relationships, positive relationships in our life that lift and inspire us. And I would probably say that's a key element in midlife, is who's around you.
Yeah, I think that the who's at your midlife table matters.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
you can't create the guest list in a day or in a week or in a month. It has to be a very intentional thought process and journey of kind of thinking about like, okay, what kind of energy do I want? What kind of energy am I done with? And how am I making this energy match what I'm wanting? Like for me, I want people who are inspiring and people who are supportive. I'm
Mm.
not here for like, I've already had enough of like, why'd you do that? And that's this and blah, 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 all the judgy stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And I just want to be with people who feel evolved as who they are and comfortable in their own skin, because
Yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable in my skin, but I find that when I'm with people who are not comfortable in their skin, that makes me anxious.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? It's that
Yeah.
energy, the energy's in the room, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And I want to
that's
be
your
with people
nervous,
who feel that way.
and that's your nervous system picking up on that anxiety. So it's looking for its cues of safety.
And I'm
It's
such an
looking for it.
empathetic person that I want to be with people who feel safe.
Yeah, yeah.
And who feel safe with me and like they want to be there and all of those things. I just think it's an interesting time. I think it's a time where you could get yourself really worked up and sad and all the things, but I also think it's a really amazing time of your life if you can use it for introspection and figuring out what works and what doesn't. I'm here for this, I'm not here for that.
And coming to the stage where it's if I don't make those active choices now, I'm just letting myself down. This is my time to start making those choices, making those changes. And that kind of self-belief and self-worth, so worth building on those skills around self-esteem, letting go of those negative internal scripts, doing that work so that you can move forward in a way that feels much more enjoyable to you. You don't want to get to another 10 years' time and think, I just wasted that, or I spent another 5, 10 years people pleasing, pacifying others, not knowing what my needs are. We're all different, Sarah.
We're all different, but I think that there was another quote in your book where you talk about what we do deserve as human beings. And I
Mm.
kind of took that and skewed it to midlife women. So this is
Go.
what I wrote. Midlifers deserve to talk to themselves with kindness. Midlifers deserve to forgive yourself for past mistakes. Midlifers deserve to grow, evolve, bloom. Midlifers deserve to trust yourself. Midlifers deserve to like yourself. Midlifers deserve to meet your own needs. Midlifers deserve to accept yourself. Midlifers deserve to be there for yourself. Midlifers deserve to treat yourself like someone you love.
Okay, well, that made me emotional. No, it did, because so many women
I
don't
know. And that's why I
absorb
pulled
those
that
words.
out because this is the time in life where we're really at the beginning of it, we're doubting ourselves. We're figuring out what's next, and we feel
Mm,
irrelevant and invisible and trying to find meaning. And we
mm,
don't think we deserve certain things because we haven't had them in the past and we haven't been meeting our own needs. So, why should we meet our own needs now? It's this kind of like stew of feelings. And I
mm.
wanted to pull that out just so that people could hear what midlife women deserve for themselves.
I love the way you changed that. I really did love the way you changed that. And it did, it really, I had a real reaction to that. I could feel it within me, and so much sadness for those that don't embody those words.
Oh, I
So
know.
much
And there's
sadness.
days where, I mean, look, I think generally speaking, I feel like I've really tried in the last 3 or 4 years to really hone in on that and focus on
Mm,
that,
mm,
because I sort of was predicting what was coming, because I am so attached to my children and so kind of enmeshed with them, healthfully or not, if that's a word.
I
But
get
I
it.
knew the day was coming where kids were leaving and they were like my whole reason for everything.
Oh, it's really that there's a grief and a loss there, isn't there? And I
Huge.
think even, and I'm really glad you said that, because actually, let's name that. Let's acknowledge that. You know, we've talked about lots of other things today, but we haven't actually talked about there's a real feeling of loss when our children leave. And it shifts a huge amount for the midlifer, a huge amount.
It
When I can
changes your
feel,
marriage, it changes the way
oh,
you feel about yourself. And I think it also, it weirdly makes you think back to to how you got parented and how you parent your own children,
mm,
because in a weird way you feel like parenting is over because they're out of the house,
mm.
but it's just bigger kids, bigger problems.
So it is, but it's up to us whether we treat it as a loss
I
or we
know.
treat it as a new chapter,
I
you know?
have been really trying to see it as a new chapter, a new season, and really
Mm,
trying not to put it like, I have one kid at home and one kid in college.
mm.
And I don't want to put my kind of loneliness and grief of his leaving onto him.
No, I know.
It's not his job to entertain me. It's not his job to give me meaning. It's not his job to figure out what to do with the rest of my life.
I
His
know.
job is to be him and to live his life to the fullest. And it's kind of figuring out and renegotiating those boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, hugely. In ways that he's not doing.
100%.
Exactly. It's you that's there having go, okay, this, and it seems to change quite quickly, doesn't it? Because
Yes.
they leave home. So it is quite sudden with that going to college. I mean, I said to you before we
Yeah.
started recording, my son went to university here, and it's really tough. And my daughters had left 6 months before him, so
Oh,
it all happened very quickly. I was bereft. I broke down, literally broke down. It's a horrible, empty feeling. But then you don't stay there, Sarah. You don't stay in that. It's about how can I shift now with this newness?
yes. And I also think it's like I was saying on Instagram over the weekend, because a lot of friends of mine, like their kids were graduating from high school, and I was reliving those feelings from last year of like, oh my God, heartbreak. And one of the things I said, I was like, lean in, cry, do the
Mm,
ugly cry. It's
mm,
coming, just do it. And
yeah.
then it's going to come again tomorrow, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't know it's coming, but it is. And I think we're trying to stay all put together and just think it's going to go away, but it's not. And it's something that we actually have to reprocess in our bodies and our brains.
We do. And we're letting go of familiarity.
Oh,
Feels alien. That feels scary. We make up such awful stories about how it's going to go. It's rarely as bad as we think it's going to be. It's rarely as bad. And I think it's about looking, I love the way you say seasons, but it's about that visualization again. How do you want this season to look? It might take a while to get into it, but how do you want it to look? We can't go back, Sarah. We can only go forward.
and the interesting thing is, like, so my son came home for 2 weeks and then went back for summer school. And I was like, oh my God, he can't do this to me again. We can't have this coming and going. It's like having a husband who's having an affair and coming back and going, you know what I mean? I'm like, no, 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 no. No.
I know.
But
Yeah, I
again,
know. I know.
it's just taking yourself back to that place and kind of knowing that it's normal to feel this way. You're not abnormal if you feel lonely when your kids leave. It's just a fact.
I mean, as you said it, I thought I'm so pleased you said it because I can hold on to feelings like as my son shut the front door last time he was home, and I said to my husband, I hate this feeling. You know, he's gone again. You get that beautiful excitement of them coming home, and then you're dropped again. It's like this, it's an empty nest feeling again. It's
I
like on
know.
repeat. You know?
I know. And then my daughter leaves next year. And that's it for
I
me.
think we need to chat again then, Sarah.
I'm gonna be like, oh my God. Oh my God.
I
And
know,
she's
I
so
know.
funny. She goes, Mom, you're talking about empty nest over the weekend on social media. I'm still here. And I go, I'm sorry. Usually I call it half empty nest.
Oh, yeah, I
And
know you
I
do.
didn't
You're
call it
funny.
half empty nest. I called it empty nest. But she was like, I'm still here. I'm like, I know, Maren, it's just a general term. It
Just
wasn't
a
that
tone.
you're not here.
No, I know,
It's
I know,
like, and
I
then I
know.
wanted to say to her, I thought you didn't really give a shit what I was doing.
Yeah,
But I
just
guess you do. I guess you do.
I know. But
It's so
it's
bad.
so true. You can't get it right, can you? You can't get
No.
it right.
Now, one last thing before we wrap up. Look, social comparison on social media in real life, it's a real thing. We're
Mm,
not going to deny it. But you talk about something in the book that I've talked about on my podcast and on my Instagram before. And I think it's worth mentioning again as women are trying to come up with kind of whatever next thing they're going to be doing in their lives is how to use comparison for inspiration rather than triggering. So, Helen starting a podcast, I'm a friend of hers. I'm feeling a little bit triggered that she's starting a podcast, and I've always kind of wanted to do it, and I just haven't done it yet. How do I go from being pissed off, angry, and jealous to shit, I'm gonna do that now?
okay. So first thing first, acknowledge the pissed off, jealous, angry bit because there's so much information in there. So sit with it, acknowledge it. What's it saying there? I mean, the first chapter in the book, I talk about emotions.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much information in the emotions. Don't suppress it. Listen to what it's trying to say. There's an energy in our emotions if we connect with it. Let's use it as a driving force. But then what I would also say, it is funny, I do love the example you've given. It has made me chuckle. But I think,
Because you
I
know it's
think,
happening.
look, I'm sat there going, oh yeah, okay, maybe you're right. But then I would always say, if she can, why not me too? So that always, why not me too? But also caveat it with, do I really want to too?
Right.
Because so often we think we do, but if we did, we would have done it. So
Mm-hmm.
what's been holding you back? If it's confidence, let's look at that confidence. Let's work on that. Let's do the deep self honesty, the deep conversations with self. Where's my confidence gone? Why do I think I can't do this? Keep asking the right questions. But I would always say, why, if she can do it, why not me too?
And then it's the whole journey of how to get out of your own way,
Yes,
right?
I've got a good podcast on that coming up.
Oh, you do? Ooh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Okay, one piece of advice for midlife women who are trying to figure out what's next.
Oh, my mind's going.
I know. Take a deep breath.
I think so. One piece of advice I mean, there's lots I want to say, which wouldn't surprise you. But I think if you break it down really simply, I would say your life matters too.
Beautiful.
And let that permeate.
That's so good. It's true. We all want to matter at the end of the day.
Mm,
Just like we said at the
mm,
beginning of the podcast, we all want
mm,
to feel seen and heard. That's it.
mm, mm.
Whether
exactly.
it's being, and I think when you're a mom, you feel, and I mean, sometimes you don't feel seen, but you do feel seen in some way because you have a very specific role.
Mm.
But then when that role starts to kind of, the lines start blurring and then you start feeling like you're disappearing, even though you didn't necessarily want to be making the lunch every day. It gave you something to define yourself with
Yeah,
to a certain extent. Um, or if you were a working mom, it's like the grass is always greener. If you're a
I
working
know.
mom, you wanted to be home. If you were home, you wanted to be at work. And it's all about that kind of give and take and all the things that come with that.
And yeah, and I would also say, because I have got the luxury of my children have come through the other side now. They've done their bit of detachment from me, their independence. If you do it right, let's not have a conversation about what right is now, but if we do
Exactly.
it right, they come back.
Not to live with you.
No, they come back because they need you. Oh, listen to
Yeah.
that. What are you going,
I'm
not to live with me. No, not to live.
like,
They
nobody's
come
living in the
back.
basement. Nobody's coming back. Like, I've done it
No,
right if they're in their own apartment. No judgment,
no.
but yeah.
But you know what I mean. They
Yes.
come back to you in a beautiful way. So
Yeah.
it's about holding space or keeping space open for them to want to.
100%. I agree with
Mm.
that. I'm so thankful that I've had this time with you and that you're a real human being and not just quotes on Instagram, and that you have a beautiful book. And I'm so excited for your podcast. I love your accent. I feel like I could listen to you. I'm not a big meditator, but I feel like you would have a really good meditation voice. I'd probably be in some like hypnotic state somewhere.
Oh, Sarah, it's just been honestly so gorgeous to chat with you.
Oh,
It
so good.
honestly.
Now, where can everyone find you?
Well, mainly Instagram. So I'm at Helen Marie, but there's dots between every letter. It's
I
really
know there's
confusing.
periods in between every letter
Oh,
of
yeah.
Helen.
So H.E. Just because there's lots of other Helen Maries
I
out there, would you
know.
believe
I
it?
get it. I made that
Okay.
mistake. I totally get it. And your new book,
Choose You.
where can we find that?
Right.
Everywhere?
At the moment, you will need to order through Blackwell's, who ship internationally from the UK. I'm just waiting to hear more from my publisher about it being in the US. So at the moment, Blackwell's, I've linked it in my bio. They ship internationally, and the cost of shipping is included in the price of the book.
Oh, okay. We'll put that in the show notes.
Thank you.
And your podcast comes out Thursday, so that will be on all
Yes.
podcast platforms.
Yes, Spotify, Apple, and on YouTube. And that's, I don't think we talk enough about.
Okay, so you're gonna have video. It's gonna be videoed on
Yeah.
YouTube. Great. And TikTok?
Not really.
Not
I'm growing
really.
it.
Yeah,
I'm
TikTok gives me a
pushing
panic
myself.
attack.
There's a lot of noise, isn't
I
there?
know. And I feel like what you do on Instagram doesn't necessarily work on TikTok. And so then I'm
Yeah,
like, oh my God, this is too many projects. I can barely do my own
I
project.
agree. I
Yeah,
agree. I think you have to pick the things that you enjoy doing. We can't spread ourselves too thinly. So I might put some of the podcasts on TikTok, but I'm not promising.
right. Exactly. I got it. I've loved chatting with you. Thank you for being a new friend. Thank you for being a new friend of the podcast. Can't wait for this to come out and for everyone to just find you and soak you up.
Thank
And thank you,
you.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your dinner in the UK. I'm going to go back to the coffee that I didn't finish this morning. I'm going to
Oh,
re-microwave it. Oh yeah, no, I'm good. I'm
no.
looking forward to my other half of my coffee drink right now.
Okay.
I love
Beautiful.
chatting with you and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think there's some crazy statistic that 75% is not gene based. It's lifestyle based. So
Can we talk about the anti-inflammatory eating?
yeah,
and all
we're
that
gonna
stuff?
do that
That's the
right
biggest-
now.
That's the biggest thing, and that's part of the reason why I started it for other reasons, but it's really changed everything in my life by eating this way, and it's